Hello, boys and girls. My name is Mike Kelly, animatorsforum.com, Real Illusion Forum. Recovering from my surgery, and this is not really a tutorial. Somebody was having trouble with this figure on the forum, and I thought I would show that I don't have a problem with it, but maybe it'll demonstrate some useful things for everybody. Just going to go through some processes. All right, so this is a Daz figure called the Snowman. First of all, this is called Snowman HD. Snowman HD. Let's be clear about this. Character Creator 3, and as well as iClone, does not support HD Daz characters. And what does that mean by does not support them? Well, number one, the details that are molded into the character, the mesh details, are not going to come across. Okay, you're not going to get those. In the new CC3s with Skin Gen, you are going to be able to do some things apparently with the normals and make them a little more highly detailed. But for the most part, just kind of forget that you're going to get that kind of detail in your character and just deal with it, I guess. So this is a Snowman HD. So you're not going to get the HD details, but we are going to get the other some things. So the first thing is he's not getting in some of these textures. I don't know why. We're going to go through the process of this. So when you load it into Daz, we've talked about this in the past, you can always find out where your textures are located at by going into any particular texture. For example, we'll go into the torso texture. And then we can go to the base texture. And they have a lot of other textures here, but we'll go to the diffuse. Well, here's the normal. I can look at it that way. So if you look at the normal maps, you can see where the pathway for that normal is. See, it's in content. They're always in Daz content, runtime textures. That's always the first part of it. In this particular case, it's Joe Quick, and then under his Snowman. So that's where you can find that. Same for base bump textures, and diffuse would be up here as well. If I'm missing it here, base color. Here we go, base color. Okay, there it is. Joe Quick again, base color. So those textures are all there. So if we go ahead and I've saved this out, I just save it, and then we're going to go into Character Creator 3, go to Transformer. We'll just load in that Snowman there. So while this is all coming in, we're going to go look at those textures, and we're going to get an idea of that. But the first thing you have to do, whenever this comes in, we always choose Advanced. Always, 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 always. There's never a time to choose Basic, ever. You might say to me, Mike, why is that button even there? I have no idea. I've talked to them about it. I wish they would just get rid of it. It has nothing to do with anything. So Advanced, we always want Advanced. There's no reason not to ever choose Advanced. And at this point, once you get to that 20%, you know it's going to load successfully. Sometimes when you don't get to that 20%, it'll have issues, and we've talked about some of those issues in the past. Okay, so here's all the items that are going to come in with it, but in order to get the textures for the actual character itself, for that body textures, we always have to bake the body texture. And you can bake it at whatever size you want. If you want it for the maximum, you can generate the 4K. I'm only going to do it for the 1024. The bigger the texture is, the longer it will take to bake those textures. So I'm going to do it at 1024, but you have to do this. If you don't do this, what happens is it assigns the default body textures to it, which are not going to work for this for sure. Okay, so while this is going around, we're going to look at the textures themselves. And this is that, again, Daz content, runtime textures, Joe Quick, and Snowman. So in Snowman, the base color is this, big rough base color. You saw where it had the normals, and if we looked at it further, you would have found the roughness. I think we did look at the roughness. Anyway, all of those textures, none of those textures, I should say, are exported in the FBX file. FBX only exports the diffuse texture. That's just the way FBX works. FBX is a weird format. There's no getting around that. So how do we get those textures? Well, what happens is I wrote a routine for Python that actually can go in and read the diffuse texture. It takes this first part of the diffuse texture, and then it chops off the rest of it. If it sees base color, it ignores that. If it sees BC for base color or base or whatever, and then it takes that first part and tries to match it up with other textures. So like the height texture, tries to find that by saying, underscore height. Same for metallic, same for, it'll actually ignores the AO textures in my routine. Normals, same thing, roughness. As a general rule, if your developer, like this guy does, names his textures properly, then this works properly. By the way, that's my routine. Real Illusion copied my routine. They took much of my code. I wouldn't say they improved it, but they added their own twist on it. So it works pretty good. I would say it's about as good as my code. Maybe even be better in some cases. I don't, like I said, I don't know if he does the AOs. I don't. He may. I do the height and stuff. But in any case, it's basically based on my code to find these things. And that's the only way you can do it. If a developer has named this improperly, and you'll see this sometimes, where like the base color will be called, I don't know, George, and then no base color, and then the height is called Big Rough Height. Well, it can't match up a base color called George with a height called Big Rough. It just can't. It's not that smart. We as humans can go through and look at this and say, oh, well, that should be the normals here, even if the names don't match up properly. For example, this could be Big BG, for example. BG base color, but this is called Big Rough, or BR, I guess. So it can't do that. No matter how smart a routine is, there's only so smart you can make it. Because if you start assuming things, then you're going to get wrong matches. And you'd actually rather have no matches than have wrong matches. So when something doesn't come in properly, when you feel like you're not getting all the textures, go to that folder for those textures, look at them, and see if the names are correct. If the names aren't correct, then you're never going to get those to drop in automatically. And that's when we use that manual process. So we talked about the manual process of, I'm not going to talk about it today, but we talked about how you can actually make these textures come in for that character. But we're not going to do that. So here we go. So here's all the textures. And if you notice that they did come in, we got the roughness texture, we have the normals. If we go over to here and we go to the body texture, you'll see that body here. Oh, I hate this. This is weird. It's a weird kind of bug in here. It doesn't refresh itself properly. See, notice how that's not refreshing itself on the, there we go, on the materials. Okay, so base here. So if we go down here, you can see that we have the base color, we have the normals. Normals came in this bump, the metallic, roughness, and this displacement is the height match. Now it didn't bring the AO. See, notice that it didn't bring that AO. So that's probably my fault because my routine doesn't bring the AO either. I should have a talk to the developers about that and see if we can get them to bring in the AO too. That's my fault. Sorry, guys. Anyway, so those textures do come in. I don't know why he's not getting his textures. This kind of has to work. There really isn't any way it can't work. The only way it would not work is if maybe the path to his runtime isn't the same as it is in Daz. In other words, here's those paths for the base. If you look at this path, for this diffuse path, this has to be the same path. That's the path it finds. It looks for that path in those other places. So I'm not sure what to tell him if it's not working. Maybe he can reload the character. But anyway, that's how it works, guys. And hopefully this has some explanation for those of you that might just be curious about how all this works. If not, then you can ignore it and we'll go on to the next better tutorial for you guys. So we'll see you on the forums.